أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ففهمنا سليمان وكلنا آتينا حكما وعلما رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم سبحانك اللهم وحنانيك أنا لا تنسني ولا تنسني الحمد لله أفضل الحمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وسائر النبيين والصالحين وسلم علم وفقني واهدني وسددني واجمع لي بين الصواب والثواب وعذني من الخطأ والهرمان آمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of Question and Answer. And this is a special episode I've been told. Obviously not special because I'm presenting it. It's always special when I present it, I'm sure. But it's extra special because it's the 600th episode, mashallah. So if I remember correctly, this started way back on the 19th of May 2016, 5 years ago now. So that's what, nearly 120 episodes or so over the 5-6 years, or the 5 years rather, since it has been running. So that's quite an achievement. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all those individuals who played a part in ensuring that 600 or so episodes are now available and launched. I'm assuming a great majority of them will be on the YouTube channel, and I've been told that actually they are all on there. And you obviously get an opportunity every time there's a scenario or an opportunity to do a rerun, then you will also be able to see them on the actual channel itself, as in on Iqra TV, as well as obviously on the YouTube channel. So they are there, and we now pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the tawfiq to carry on for another 600 episodes, which may be a lot quicker than I think another 5 years, because if math serves me correctly, if we do 5 a week, and that's what, 50 weeks, that's 250 a year rather. So if it's 250 a year, even if we exclude, say, about 20-30 episodes, so make it 220, then arguably in about another 3 years rather, we should hit another 660. So, and surpass the current 600 mark. So I think that's going to be the target. What are we in now? 2021. So inshallah ta'ala by 2024, we should have doubled that number of 600 episodes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us health and long life to be able to achieve, and tawfiq to be able to achieve that task. So as usual, let's stick to the plan. The plan is questions come in, and inshallah ta'ala we will try our utmost through the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the efforts of our teachers and the efforts of the past ulama to try to put some answers in front of you to be able to deal with your day-to-day issues. As usual, the number is the same. It's 01274 214 299. Yeah, it would be a bit crazy, wouldn't it, if we change the landline number every day? That would be something interesting, but no, that's not what we do. We stick to the same landline number. That's 01274 214 299. So if you do have some calls that you wish to make, then please do so, because you know how it works now. We have 2 segments of approximately 20 minutes before we go disappear for a break. So make the most of those opportunities, because it does take a while for the caller to explain their question, a few minutes, and then it does take me a while to obviously respond. So easily 5-10 minutes can disappear with one call. So now's a good time, inshallah ta'ala, to make a call if you wish, or at least in the next sort of 10 minutes or so. Whilst we wait for our call, again, you will also know, for those sessions that I deliver, that I usually dip into the questions that I receive on a daily basis from our question and answer Darul Iftar group that we have set up on our platform here, where people across the planet can ask questions 24/7, and we provide them a response, usually within a 24-hour, worst case 48-hour setting, which is remarkable and an unusual service, alhamdulillah, that we provide, myself and a couple of my colleagues on the Markazul Iftar wal Qadha Darul Iftar platform. And so whilst we do wait for the calls to come in, there's one particular lengthy post that I posted both on my Facebook page and also on my Twitter feed, which is about solutions. Okay, and what I mean by solutions is, we see nowadays, for example, those people who general public who are quite comfortable and relaxed in my presence. Normally, obviously, when a person sits in front of a scholar, sits in front of a mufti, is a little bit careful, and she's a little bit careful of what they say. They don't want necessarily the scholar to be judgmental, to kind of think, okay, this person's a bit strange or whatever. So they try to kind of, toe the line, give textbook, try to behave in a textbook manner, and out of adab and etiquettes. But those individuals who are familiar with me, and I try my utmost to make people feel comfortable when they come to me with a question. I try not to be abject, and try not to be distant, and try not to disengage. The sunnah of the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is, when someone does come to you, obviously at the appropriate time, that you give them your full attention, your full due attention and full respect, and hear what the person has to say. So one of the queries is that when we sit in these circles is that, people have said it to me, and scholars have shared it with me, that they've said it to other scholars as well, is that sometimes we don't go to ask questions from ulama because we think they'll say it's haram. Okay, they will say that's haram. And that's why we don't go. So that's somewhat amusing, but also quite concerning. Amusing in the sense that, okay, you kind of know what the answer is, so what's the point in asking? Or you don't want to hear the answer, so you don't ask, thinking ignorant is bliss, even though it obviously isn't. And the third point, obviously, in this case, is that it's somewhat concerning that people don't feel that they want to approach ulama because they feel their response will be, it is haram. So, so you get that quite a lot. So what happens, is that people start to disengage. And what builds in the minds of the people is that the Sharia, as it's being applied, as it's being facilitated by the ulama, can't deal with contemporary concerns, or because most contemporary concerns are a change, it seems to kind of give a default position of haram. Now, I know that's an ignorant understanding, that's not due to any sound understanding of the Sharia, but it's what builds up over time, and that's how people understand that. So anyway, we'll carry on with that discussion. We've got a couple of callers coming, so let's take the first caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and I think it's my brother from Peterborough.
Wa alaikum salam. So that you just told me that I am the first caller, so normally we can...
MashaAllah, barakallah
How are
feek.
you today?
Sorry?
How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, barakallah feek. I'm doing very well, alhamdulillah. Feel a little bit, as I was saying to my colleague, end of week-itis, which is an illness you normally get by the end of the week, where you feel quite tired and unusual. But inshallah, I'm sure I've got enough energy, and you will be sending du'as from where you are in Peterborough to keep me going for the remainder of the day, inshallah.
Most certainly. You do give full consideration to all your participants,
Right.
but your maths was a bit weak. You missed yesterday as well. So
Oh.
you need to factor in all your missing. I see what you meant. The 20. You counted the 20.
Yeah. And in my defense, and I hope the producer doesn't, hopefully the producer doesn't cut me off, is I was in the studio ready to go, but there were some technical issues. I think that's the phrase for it, technical issues. So those technical issues have now been dealt with. The rats in the cables have been found and dealt with appropriately. So we're now ready to serve your needs.
So we'll forgive you for that. I was watching today a documentary on a obviously Islamic channel, and they were saying in Dublin, in the 90s, Sheikh Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai,
yeah.
he paid and funded the mosque in Dublin.
Okay.
And they showed a documentary about it, and there was a imam or whoever it was. They were saying we employ all professional people. What a beautiful mosque it was, chandeliers and everything. I mean, I've never seen a mosque like that in the UK anyway. But this is the point. They were doing it exactly, and they were saying we are all like I'm breaking up, Middle Eastern and East African sort of people who are doing it. So what I'm trying to say is, are we lacking as the Pakistani community in Southeastern? We're lacking in that professionalism to even run a mosque.
That's
because
it.
I don't see it. To be honest with you, I don't see it in my mosque in Peterborough anyway. Yeah, they open for namaz and thank you very much, goodbye. And if the teachers they've got kids teaching kids.
Yes, very interesting point, and I will share my thoughts on that, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair for that, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Barakallah. You take care of yourself. Speak soon, inshallah. May see you next week. Okay, and we have a second caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that even you have tiny ignorance, you won't go to Jannah. But generally speaking, if our behavior, our dealings, the way we practically deal with things, even with other people, our behavior is like to dominate ourselves. We should try to dominate the whole society. We should try. Our goal should be that everybody should be dominated in Islamically. They should become very strong, and not even in other dealings. Like we want to make impression through our houses, our furniture, even our small things, cars, and even our education. Everything is for which is forbidden in Islam in a way.
Okay.
That you can't do riyakari, like showing off. You only fulfill your needs. I'm not saying that it's bad thing wearing nice clothes or anything, but that is really like a trend that we know everything about stars, like those stars which take you towards darkness. So most our children activities goes around these they go out and eat. Even they don't know how to eat proper food, and they're having so many problems. And we should collectively, we should get together, and even in mosque we should once a month or once a week or some type of counseling we should arrange to address people and get together. And we should treat mosque like our homes as well. We don't do that. We don't spend in Allah's house that much, and we are so selfish. So all these things, they are very painful.
I will address those. Jazakallah khairan, sister. Jazakallah khairan. So we have a third caller coming in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Jazakallah khairan. What did you want to raise? Do you have a question?
My question is, are the Palestinians allowed to defend themselves against the Zionists?
So you want me to discuss the Palestinian issue?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Jazakumullah khair for that. Okay, so we got three questions come in. Alhamdulillah. So what we'll do is do call in still if you have anything. It's 01274 214 299. We still got some time before our short interval to take more questions. And whilst we're waiting for somebody to call in on 01274, we had a nice young caller there. Alhamdulillah, it's good to hear that some of the youngsters are listening and calling in. That's good. Please do get your young children interested in these sorts of programs, and the questions, if they can ask the questions here on this platform, it'll make things a lot easier than to ask them in schools, ask them with people who may not lack any information. So let's go back, and I think the first two callers, actually the calls do tie in. In terms of the second caller, the sister said that you cannot enter Jannah even if you have a small amount of ignorance. The actual thing is you cannot enter Jannah if you have a small amount of arrogance, not necessarily ignorance. There are many people, obviously, who won't be fully understand the full laws of the Sharia, but they will still enter Jannah because, obviously, they followed people to the best of their ability. It is arrogance, kibr, where a person thinks themselves better than others, where a person belittles others. That type of person, that person will not enter Jannah, even if he has an iota's amount of arrogance. So this is something that we need to bear in mind. I fully agree with the observation our brother made, Peterborough, about the scenario that we find ourselves in. And I've explained this because I'm working with a cemetery in South London, and I'm working with some non-Muslim colleagues as well. And there's two graves side by side, or two cemeteries side by side. One is a non-Muslim cemetery and one is a Muslim cemetery. And one of the problems that they speak to me about is how the Muslims, when they enter and leave the graveyard, the manner in which they do that. For example, the cars will travel at very high speed, relatively, for the cemetery. They won't wait to see when there's a corpse, a person in a hearse, a dead person in a hearse that's traveling by. It would be adab and etiquettes to let the hearse go first and let the congregation go and then go. They just seem to kind of like push in there, and there's only a space enough for one car on this sort of area, so then people are having to go over grass. And they mention that to me, and it's good. I'm happy that they have the confidence to mention that to me. And my answer is the same. Majority of us from the South Asian community come from low socio-economic background. What I mean is that usually our literacy levels are quite low. We're not coming from professional backgrounds. We're coming from quite mundane kind of manual type of work. And we're coming from villages, poor areas within Pakistan, poor areas within Bangladesh. So when we arrive here, unfortunately, we just kind of look to make more and more money. We don't go beyond that. We don't think that, look, money is not the solution to everything, that, having a nice place, sharing memories. And there's something which you could look into, which is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you look into that, it's very useful, where it explains that, the stages we go through to become better people, to become a different type of person. And once we establish something, we go on to the next, to the next, to the next. So we as a community are a little bit behind. When we get people coming from India, for example, especially from, say, East African countries, from the Arab lands, then they're tending to come from relatively more professional, relatively higher up on the socio-economic ladder. So when they come in, they've got better organizational skills. They're not arguing and fighting with each other. They can run a masjid very well. So touching again upon the sister's point, they can ensure that the masjid is available for counseling. Their teachers will get, sufficient support. The community will pay decent fees. I was explaining this, just a couple of sessions ago, that if you're paying £5 maktab fees for your child, and your child is going there, there's 20 children in the class, then, that's 5 times 20, work that out, what's that, £100? So that's £100 that's going to one class, and that's a teacher in that class, and there's the lights are in that class, the gas heating is in that class, the maintenance is in that class, the water that the children are using is for that class. So £100 for the gas, the electric, the water, any rates that they may be paying, and then the ustad's wages. Is that really, how is that possible? How can anyone, and then you're going to get poor quality teachers, because how many of us can afford to run a family and run a house on less than £100 a week? How are we supposed to do that? So many teachers, may Allah bless them, do it out of the goodness of their heart. They don't do it for the money, for crying out loud. And unfortunately, some community members will actually say that, they're doing it for the money. Really? You could pack shelves in a supermarket and get triple that rate. So if anybody's doing it for the money, then they're not very smart, because there's so many other options they could use. So until we as a community wise up and mature and start taking these sorts of things seriously, then we will lag behind. And we will start to lag further and further and further behind until it can only get to a point where the system collapses. At least now there is a system there, very weak, but it's there. So, like-minded people like our brother from Peterborough and others need to start getting involved and start to say, look, we need to make a change. Our community needs to make a change. Some masajids are still charging the same fees as when I used to go to maktab. And I know some of you might think I'm still in my 20s, but trust me, I'm not. So how can it be that nearly 40, 50 years later, nearly gave my age away, nearly 40 odd years later, that people are paying the same maktab fees as they paid 40 years ago? And when we look at, for example, when I used to go to a local store and we used to get those, a certain particular type of crisps, they used to cost 6p. I bought some the other day, they're like 60p now. So those same packet of crisps, same probably less quantity in them, has has gone up in price by tenfold, and yet the fees are still the same. When electric has gone up, gas has gone up, water rates have gone up. So how can that be? How can that be sustainable? So I hope I've dealt with those two questions. I will pick up the Palestinian question because we have had that before. Inshallah ta'ala, I will touch upon that. But we're due to go for a short break soon, inshallah. So I don't think it's something I will raise. I have discussed this Palestinian issue before as well. But maybe the caller who called in didn't particularly see that episode. So inshallah ta'ala, I will address that and maybe take into consideration the age range as well, develop it in that way. But I just want to finish off on those points. I really urge my community, and we like to put this onto the shoulders of the ulama. The ulama will do this, ulama will do that. I don't think that's going to happen like that until we as a community step up. So inshallah ta'ala, do call in after the break, and we will deal with some more of your questions. See you shortly. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.